On today's episode of Killing Through the Leaf, we are talking with Shelley. She is a mom who has been advocating for plant medicine for her son, Will. And we are just talking about how her struggle has been these past 10 years trying to get the medicine that her child needs, that they have a choice. So I hope you enjoy this session. It was really inspiring and moving, and I just hope you enjoy things.
Please tell me about yourself. I'll tell you a little bit about me, but I'd love to hear about you.
Sure. So we live in Bellevue, Nebraska, and we have 5 children. And Will is our third oldest, and he is 22, will be 23 soon. And he is our one who suffers from Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. So I don't know how much you want to know.
Yeah, no, please
Okay,
tell
am
me.
I going the right direction? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he is, although he's 22, he's cognitively about a 1 to 2-year-old. He has seizures every day, has since he was 4 months old. He is also legally blind, still in diapers, completely nonverbal. So dependent on us for care 24/7. So we have exhausted a lot of FDA approved pharmaceuticals. And we have looked at the surgical route, but have never gone that route. Personally, our family doesn't feel comfortable with it because we don't feel like the guarantee is enough to put them through it. And that's about it. Unless you have some more extensive questions, I can go a little deeper.
What made you was that the thing that moved you to get involved? How long have you been
It
involved
did.
in trying to?
So we have been doing this now. Let's see, he's 22, almost 23. We've been doing it since he was 11. So we're going on 12 years. When he was 11, I specifically remember it was August of 2013. And in my epilepsy online groups, parent groups, etc., a lot of people were talking about a documentary that was going to come on CNN called Weed by Dr. Sanjay Gupta. And they were going to do a story about a little girl who was having seizures and was helped by medical marijuana. And I was like, we have to watch this, see what this is about. So we sat down, we watched the documentary, and we were just like, oh my gosh, this is something that could help Will. I was very naive about medical cannabis. I didn't know really anything about it except for what I had saw in this documentary. And I also had zero political experience. But so what I found out was not too soon after that, he had a doctor appointment and a neurology appointment. And I very naively asked the epileptologist for a prescription for medical cannabis. And he kind of laughed and he said, well, I can't do that. And I said, well, why not? I said, we watched this documentary and showed that it really helped. And he said, well, it's not legal here. And I was like, oh, and I mean, that was how naive I was about it all. And so I was like, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to make this happen then for Will? Because that just doesn't seem right that he can't try this. But, this other little girl was able to, and I was seeing on my online groups. Then I started learning more and more. And I started learning that other parents in other states were approaching their legislators and asking them to pass legislation on medical cannabis. So in November of 2013, our own senator was having a town hall, and we took Will to the town hall. My husband and I did, and we approached her and we asked her if she would consider introducing a bill to legalize medical cannabis. And I think at that time there were like 21 states that had some form of medical cannabis legislation. And I just really badly wanted Nebraska to be the 22nd state so we could hurry up and try this.
Right.
And unfortunately, that did not go anywhere. She dropped a bill and then she ended up withdrawing it. She just panicked, I think, realizing the depth and the controversy that it was going to cause. And I would like to say that because of us being so naive, that kind of protected us from realizing what this was eventually going to all snowball into. And the next year, we approached again and we had another senator come forward who was very gracious. He took the ball and he went running with it and tried to introduce legislation, and then it just kept going from there up until the point that we're at now. So that's how we got started in it.
When you first went in there and you were talking to the first senator
Uh-huh.
who endorsed it and then took it back, what and you still said you felt like you were still pretty naive about everything.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
Looking at that now, what was it that you saw? Like the fear or
Yes, it was definitely the fear that she had about just being questioned about it. And she was concerned that her supporters would not be in support of her doing this, her colleagues, etc.
it?
And, that was hard for us because it's like, well, but we're talking about, someone's life. We're talking about our child's life. And then we quickly found out that there were others that wanted this too. Like Sherry was the first person who contacted me and said,
Okay.
"Hey, I saw your story in the newspaper." Because pretty soon we had, after I'd watched the documentary, even before we approached our senator, what I did was I emailed all the news outlets and I said, "This is what we want for our son," because I didn't know how else to get anyone's attention. And then after I got the media's attention and they ran some stories, then I was like ready for the next step. Okay, now I'm going to approach our senator and do this. So, yes, I think there was just a lot of ignorance about it. And for us, we just, ever since, I mean, we just always viewed it as a medicine. And had already had so much experience with his FDA approved pharmaceuticals that had so many harmful side effects that we were like, we don't understand what the issue is with wanting to try this. So that was really hard, but
Oh yeah, I can't imagine having to go through something like that. I wanted to ask a question kind of because I feel like maybe people have asked you this before, not really thinking about, them putting themselves in your shoes. Like,
Mhm.
why haven't you like moved to a place
Mhm.
where you could
Sure.
be able to provide that for your son? And even like the legal, being afraid of getting your son taken away from you. I understand that's something very scary, but just to kind of get that, you know, I don't think it is fair until people put themselves in your shoes, but just
Right.
what do you tell people when they ask you that question?
Yes, we've definitely have been asked that, and it is a fair question. And it just comes down to the fact that his medical team is here, his whole education support team was set up here, his intervention teams, our insurance, his Medicaid, and our family and friends, our support system, not having the financial means to be able to just uproot and do something like that. So we made the tough decision to go ahead and stay and just fight for it. And yeah, that was really what it came down to.
With every Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Sure.
No, I just really wanted, I don't think people understand how hard it could be to just uproot like your entire life and not have like your
Right,
support system
right,
there, your family and all of, like you said, his teams who know him, right?
right. We'd have to reestablish all of that, and to do that just seemed very daunting.
Oh yeah, for sure. Um, since then, since like when you first started till now, what were some of like the ups and downs that you saw where you felt like hopeful and then all of a sudden maybe like did you ever feel like you just wanted to stop or what kind of just kept you
Oh yeah, I mean
at?
it's been such an emotional roller coaster, and things always seemed to change on the turn of a dime. Especially when it comes to legislation, we'd think, "Oh my gosh, we're gaining traction here. This is going to finally happen," and then at the last minute, someone would shove an amendment in, or they would, yank something back, or I mean, it was constantly hills and valleys, and You know, our reasoning for keep going was not just Will, but other people who we started meeting, other parents and other patients of other ailments. And so, and we just kept telling the legislators that we are not going away. We're going to keep coming back with this every year until something is done, whether it be through you or through the people. So, yeah, we just kept moving forward. You know, I will say that we are very grateful for sure that other people have stepped forward in the last, especially in the last 5 years, especially the campaign manager of Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana, Krista Eggers. I did not have, I still did not have a lot of the knowledge to run something like that, especially a ballot initiative. Also, just didn't have the time to devote to it. I do have a full-time job and plus taking care of our children and so we are very grateful that others started coming forward and saying, hey, you know, we're going to help do this and move forward with it. And they knew what they were doing and
Oh, yeah,
so,
like
yeah.
it kind of just help put everything together.
Yeah, yeah,
And
for
then,
sure.
and then instead of getting like a legislative person or a senator to endorse you, then
Right,
when the initiative for um,
right.
petitions took place.
Right, because the legislature just wasn't doing anything, and we had kept going back to them year after year and saying, "We'll work with you, you know, we're willing to work on this together," and they just didn't want to, and they only wanted it their way, and their way was always a bill that just was not workable, just really wouldn't provide the right access that was needed for patients, and so yeah, the best way was to do it through the ballot initiative.
What kind of what kind of things were they proposing that you felt like it wouldn't give you
A big
access?
one was the delivery method as far as how it would be ingested. A lot of times they were saying only oil, only pills, and then also limiting the ailments. That was like a big deal too. And we were always like, you know, why is the legislature deciding what ailments is something that the nurse practitioner or physician should be deciding, you know, not the legislature. They're always claiming, well, we need to let the doctors do this. Yet you're picking which ailments should be helped by it. So those were the two biggest ones.
Do you do you still find or do you find it that people are maybe even the providers are not on board with it or
I don't feel like they're on board with it yet. They're still, I kind of don't blame them. They just don't have any guidance right now still, even though it's legal, they don't really have any guidance as to what they're supposed to do or if they do it, you know, are there going to be any repercussions? So I think once we get a framework worked out and some guidance for the physicians, and maybe more will be willing to come forward. But I do think that that is going to be tough for a while.
this is something I didn't ask the other two moms, but I having like I did a deep dive on, cannabis medicine. I started a long time ago in high school, and then I kind of, I let that part of my life go because, I
Mhm.
wasn't using anymore, but then I was diagnosed with lupus. And then going down that deep dive on a medical avenue, I learned about the endocannabinoid system. Did
Mhm.
are you like are these things that you bring up to your providers or are these things that you feel like you kind of when you went on your deep dive you started finding like, oh my God, we have an
Right,
endocannabinoid system and
right,
that sort of thing.
right.
Can you explain?
Yes, you know, we haven't brought up the endocannabinoid system, but I find that with a lot of the physicians, they feel like CBD is the only answer. And they are already saying, well, if CBD didn't work for him, then medical cannabis isn't going to work for him at all. And it's like, well, that's not true. You know, he needs the whole plant and needs to work synergistically. And, you know, he may be a patient that needs only THC or THCA. And so that was a big thing. But yeah, the endo, you know, we've given them research articles and all that, but I don't know if it just gets put on a pile on their desk and collects dust or what, because nothing really has come fruitful from doing that. But yes, so that's what we've tried to do.
And they just is it more like, well, I don't know
Yeah,
than like, or do you feel
it's,
it's,
I feel like it's kind of both. It's, I don't know, and it's, well, no, that's not, just CBD is what he needs. And if he's tried CBD and it hasn't worked, then nothing's going to work.
so he has tried like the Epidiolex or just
Yes.
CBD?
Yeah,
Okay.
as a matter of fact, he's on the Epidiolex now.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of hard to say whether it's helped a whole lot, but we feel like out of all his medications, that's the safest one that he's on, even though it is still produced by a pharmaceutical company. We still feel like that one has the least amount of side effects, if any. So yeah, he is currently on that. Obviously, it doesn't completely control his seizures. He is on other seizure medications as well, but
What are what are your hopes for this time around now that the steps are there? Or do you feel like there's gonna be some roadblocks and it's gonna take its time?
yes, good question. I think there will always be roadblocks. I think there will be, I'm not sure what we might have to compromise on, but there might have to be some compromises that are made, and then we have to come back the following year and say, hey, this now needs to be changed, because this is what's happening with the system that's been developed. So I think that it will always be ongoing. Uh, and I mean, our hope is that, of course, all Nebraska patients will be treated as patients, and that they are able to have accessible, they're able to have easier access for getting it and for treating themselves, and also for patients themselves like us to have more guidance on how to give it to Will, and not how to give it, but the dosing and what strain does work for him. I mean, we just truly don't know, and we're not really comfortable in just trying whatever strain unless we were guided by someone who was more knowledgeable in cannabis or was an actual grower. I mean, my dream would be to someday have his own personal grower, someone who actually grows, Will's particular strain of medicine. Whether they grow other people's too is fine, but just someone who would really know Will and know, what is working for him and
Oh,
what
yeah,
kind of tweaks we'd have to make if we were giving it to him.
right. Now that's amazing. I love how you want, that that would be something very beneficial for him is just to grow a specific you know, strain or a species of plant that,
Right,
hits all the points that he needs in his to help
right,
him,
right,
become
right. And
healthier.
as well as I do, I mean, every pharmaceutical treats every person differently, just like cannabis. Cannabis treats
Oh
every
yeah,
single person differently. So,
absolutely.
yeah, I would love to see something very individualized for him.
Yeah, no, that would be amazing. And then kind of going back to the barrier or the barriers you feel like it's just like the knowledge or just not having things set up. Do you think there's going to be any pushback from our government to try to, because right
I
now we're,
do with the state that we live in, for sure. Yeah, I think there will always be some pushback. I'm not sure how much what's going on legislature now, but there is one bill in particular that is not a good bill at all. But they don't think it will make it out of committee. We hope not. And yeah, I think there will always be someone who ignorantly does something like that. So yes.
how has your knowledge grown? Because I'm not going to be, I will be completely honest. Like I still find it very hard to understand like how, things get, put in like I learned a lot from, collecting signatures and understanding like this is just and I think a lot of people don't understand how our judicial system works. So do you feel like you've learned a lot in being active? What is like what is something that you generally tell people when or have you ever heard like, oh, I thought it was already legal in Nebraska, or like why do you need it medicinally? Like what what steps or what would you tell somebody, like, hey, this is what has been like a synopsis of our place in with the
So what,
cannabis initiative. Like where are we right now? And what would you tell somebody to hopefully like try to help out?
Yes, I would say that right now it's a very gray area that you are definitely able to try whatever you want. That's kind of how it is right now. However, there may be some ramifications from whether it be law enforcement or legislators who just don't quite understand it. And I just think it's a very gray area right now. And to wait until Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana and the legislature, they're working together, build that framework and get that infrastructure going, then you will probably feel more confident in treating yourself or treating a loved one, and not having any ramifications from that. I mean, personally, for ourselves, we want to wait until those regulations are in place. And I think like October 1st is when they're supposed to have them all in place. And then eventually uh, the the growers, the companies will come in and establish their entities. And that's when we'll feel comfortable with that. Okay, we aren't going to have anything that's going to happen to Will or to us if we try it now.
Okay, yeah, just making sure the things that are in place, so then you have
Right,
like um medical grade cannabis versus
right,
like
right.
maybe,
That too, for
yeah,
sure.
okay. No, that sounds, no, yeah, I'm hoping that things kind of like work out,
Hmm.
in the patient's favor. Um, because I just, like you, I don't understand what the disconnect is there, even on the federal level. Like,
Right,
um, why haven't we moved forward to doing the things that we need to do?
right.
Will have access and even learn the knowledge. Because I definitely didn't learn about the endocannabinoid system in school. I went to
Hmm.
nursing school 12 years ago or so. I just was recently heard one nurse I was on a like a networking call with, who she is either getting her doctorate or master's or doctorate degree. And she said she had just learned about the endocannabinoid system in her neurology class. So I feel like we're there's changes being made, but like
Right.
it just has been so slow.
Yes.
Um, and you did mention that you were very ignorant about cannabis in general. Do you think that comes from the stigma around cannabis, or did you, or even cannabis
Hmm.
marijuana? I mean, I guess it's technically the same thing. One is more derogatory term versus
Right,
cannabis. Um,
right.
there, what do you feel like it was a lot of stigma there, especially when trying to
Mhm.
learn about it, or what kind of?
Yes, I would definitely say a lot of stigma. And then I grew up in the 70s, so I was educated, well, there wasn't even such thing. It's just marijuana. Marijuana was bad, stay away from it. There's just no medicinal use, no benefits to it, nothing. So yes, so that's where my ignorance came in. I obviously didn't know that it was illegal everywhere. I just thought it was just something bad that everyone was supposed to stay away from.
Okay. And now, um, in getting involved in all of the Nebraskans for medical marijuana and learning more, how do you feel about the plant itself and the endocannabinoid system? Like,
Now I just marvel at it. And the more that I found out about it, I was like, oh my gosh, look what we're missing out on here. I mean, the fact that this can help with so many different ailments. And it was just, it was not hard for me to embrace at all. It is hard for me to understand why others are so against it. Especially when you do even try to educate them, they still are just so staunchly opposed. And I don't know, I just have a very different view of it.
oh yeah, no, I mean, because because you hear and you probably have seen, how it has been beneficial to people who are very sick and who have had seizures or have
Right,
Parkinson's, or well, like
right.
you can just see like in real time the things that it can do.
Yeah, and it's not just like for the common cold. I mean, this is for like debilitating conditions. And the fact that we are withholding it from people is just, to me, that's just criminal.
Yes, no, absolutely. Like almost as if, our government is putting a death sentence on some of the people that really could
Right,
benefit
absolutely.
from
Yes.
this medication for sure. No, yeah, thank you for sharing that. That
Mhm.
for sure. And what do you feel like we need as a state now? Like, what do you hope, what are you hoping people need to do, or what do we need to do if for people who are for cannabis? Like, we want this to move forward. Because I interact with people who are like, oh, I thought it was legal. There's dispensaries everywhere. And then, there is that loophole where, yes, you can buy
Right,
cannabis at this, at the dispensary
right,
here. It's grown locally, but it's a loophole.
right.
But what is it, do you think that we need to keep this movement going forward,
Mhm.
or to keep things kind of moving forward? What do
Yeah,
you,
to
what would you ask
definitely
our fellow,
follow, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely follow the Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana page, because that will really keep them up to date as to what's going on in the legislature, and will also uh, give them guidance as to what kind of action needs to be taken, whether they need to email their state senator, or call them, or write a testimony and submit it. They'll give simple steps for how to do that. So, if they're really interested in seeing it continue to move forward, and for us to have a really good, um, safe, safely regulated for patients in our state, to just become involved in just the smallest way, whether it's making a phone call or sending an email to their state senator, and to just follow, if they're on social media, to follow Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana page, or sign up for their newsletters at least, and get the emails as to what's going on.
awesome. I love that. Thank you for, because I think
Mhm.
a lot of people just don't know. They're like,
Sure,
or what can I do? And
sure.
obviously, like a bunch of moms got together and they did the damn thing. They did it
Right,
for years and years and years.
right.
I just want to tell you thank you so much, and I'm honored
Yes.
that you've allowed for all of those things to happen, and we're at this point now. I
Yes.
I hope you understand that you're like some of those amazing people that I've met, because there's this will inside of you, and I love that your son's name is Will, that is just like,
Right,
urging you to go pursue the thing that's gonna,
right.
the right thing, or I
Right.
love
Well,
that.
thank you. We have been very blessed with the people who we've met along the way. I mean, we, quickly realized that this was much bigger than just our own situation. This is,
Right,
many, many people's situations. Might look a little different, but all the same, they all want the same common thing. And
right,
that's to have a
better.
quality of life. I mean,
Yes,
that's what it is.
yeah, quality of life. No, for sure. I don't really have any other questions for
Okay.
you. Thank you so much. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Um,
sorry to hear about your lupus diagnosis.